Oh, what it must be like to walk in the shoes of Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers. I'm Glenn Norton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So I wasn't going to do a show on this, but the more I thought about it, the more it agitated me because we keep seeing it. It keeps happening. Um, I'm sure there's not a legal way for Aaron Rodgers to go about this, but I wish that guy could I wish he could get $1 every time somebody said his name and try to portray him in a negative light and just for clicks. I get it. Listen, the media, the media sports reporting environment has become very competitive. Um, Being truthful, honest, correct, that stuff doesn't tend to matter that much anymore. Wild Wave, how we doing, buddy? Um, every couple weeks or months, there has to be some hot take on Aaron Rodgers and why he's this, he's a terrible person and he's not. So the latest, here's the latest. Chris Canty, um, former D lineman with the Giants and Cowboys, I believe. He was a 2 or 3 sack a year guy for 7 or 8 years. Um, from New York, so we found a gig, on the radio in the New York market, which is what a lot of guys do because there's a lot of ears and eyeballs and in that market. So familiar name, local guy. So you get on the radio. But what do you have to do on the radio nowadays, or TV? It doesn't matter what level you're analyzing, how big your audience is. You have to badmouth people because that's how you get your name. This is a perfect example. I make a point. You will very, very rarely, if ever, hear me talk about these talking heads, these shock jock style radio hosts whose only objective is to get ears on tuned into their shows. This will not get me tuned into Chris Canty's show. I think he's on ESPN New York. I'm not sure. Listen, I'm in England. All I see clips on my Twitter feed. That's it. I don't watch ESPN. I don't watch anything. I watch games and I listen to podcasts of people I respect. Because let's face, and I'm not even talking about me here. Like, remove Jet Nation from the equation. Um, there are podcasts, sports and Jets podcasts, that I respect a million times more than the national media and people like Chris Canty. So here's Chris Canty's latest insane rant. And he's not the only one. There's a lot of lunatics out there making these completely. I can't even believe he believes what he's saying. Like, I understand he's got to get the views and he's got to get people to talk. And here we are talking about him. But like I said, I rarely, rarely, rarely ever do this. I hate doing it. But this one got to me because it's so absurd that as I'm listening to Chris Canty yammer on about Aaron Rodgers, I just can't stop but thinking, even he doesn't believe this. Like, Chris Canty does not believe what he's saying right now, but he knows we're going to talk about it. So let's talk about it. Canty says Aaron Rodgers isn't a leader. And the reasons he gives for why Aaron Rodgers isn't a leader is because the Packers lost big games while he was at quarterback. Are we holding everyone to that standard? Because in that case, there are no leaders at quarterback. Every quarterback loses a big game. And it's not, you're pretending, Chris Canty, to not know the difference between leadership and talent or preparation. If you're playing a better team, or if you get out coached, or if you're playing with, coming off a broken thumb and can't throw the football as well as you'd like to, there are other factors. The Packers didn't, he pointed to a final game of the year when they lost to the Packers or when they lost to the Lions in Rodgers' final game, that was a lack of leadership on the part of Rodgers. That's a lack of execution. You can be the worst leader in the world and be able to execute. You can be the best leader in the world and have a bad day. And he's got to know, he's got to be pretending he doesn't know this. Why? Because and listen, I've said before, I'm glad Aaron Rodgers is a Jet. I'm expecting big things. But I wasn't one of these, I wasn't one of these guys doing backflips saying, let's go get Rodgers. Or I shouldn't even say that. I wasn't happy with the price the Jets paid to get Rodgers. And I was critical of it. And I was at the point where I was like, I don't care if they move on and don't even get the guy. So I'm not some Aaron Rodgers cheerleader who's running to his defense because another talking head has some stuff to say about him. I'm just watching this objectively as a fan and listening to the words coming out of this guy's mouth. And I'm saying, is this guy really pretending that Aaron Rodgers or that any quarterback, any player isn't a leader if the team loses a big game? That's preposterous. Absolutely preposterous. He brings up Joe Flacco. Oh, the Jets didn't bring back Joe Flacco because Aaron Rodgers. You think Aaron Rodgers was going to be threatened by Joe Flacco? Really? You think Aaron Rodgers is like, oh, don't bring Joe in here. I got a job to keep. You got to be kidding me. And the reason the Jets didn't bring in Joe Flacco, Chris Canty, if you'd taken a moment to watch a Jets game, you would have noticed the offensive line couldn't block anyone. And Joe Flacco wouldn't have lasted 3 minutes behind that O-line. So it wasn't about, oh, we've got to protect Aaron, and we don't want to think he's going to lose his job to Joe Flacco. Again, he's got to be pretending. He must be pretending to think this. There's no way a sane human being who watched that Jets football team believes Joe Flacco was going to come in there and threaten Aaron Rodgers' security, and Aaron Rodgers would be worried about Joe Flacco outplaying him. Not a chance even he believes that. But he says it. But Aaron Rodgers has to sit there with these people with these ridiculous, ludicrous takes, these please look at me, please click on my link, please listen to my latest rant. And Rodgers gets nothing for it. They owe him money. Listen, the next guy we'll talk about, Nick Wright. And I don't know who he works for nowadays. I don't know if it's Fox Sports 1 or ESPN or whoever. But every now and then, his name pops up on my feed. And it's only when he talks about Aaron Rodgers. This guy would not exist if not for Aaron Rodgers. He owes Aaron Rodgers a cut of his check. Every time Aaron Rodgers opened his mouth, Nick Wrong comes along, and he's like, "Oh, this is preposterous. I'm so offended. Aaron Rodgers has deeply offended me. Aaron Rodgers is the most dangerous athlete of my life." Ever heard of Ray Caruth? Nick Wrong? Yeah. Aaron Hernandez? Aaron Rodgers is more dangerous than Aaron Hernandez? I would disagree. I would strongly disagree. Why? Well, listen, if I got to tell you, Nick Wrong, I don't know how or why these people get platforms. There's a part of me that even thinks Nick Wright might be smarter than he pretends to be on the air. But I don't know what fans they're trying to appeal to, the lowest common denominator, like idiot fans that eat that up. I couldn't imagine being brain dead enough to sit and stare at a television screen with Nick Wright telling me Aaron Rodgers is dangerous. He talked about the Kimmel thing, and I hate getting into that. But let's call it. Here's the one thing that Nick Wright did that would seem super intelligent to really stupid people. So stupid people watching Nick Wright would have heard him talking about Aaron Rodgers and the Jimmy Kimmel situation. And Nick says, I think here are some of the things Aaron Rodgers could do. But this is literally the only thing I've watched from Nick Wright in about a decade. And it was literally 5 minutes ago because I read what he'd said in a headline and thought, idiot, not worth paying attention to. But since I'm going to discuss it here, I thought, let me watch what the idiot said. So what he said was he outlined so long story short on the Jimmy Kimmel situation. It was what was it? The guy's name, the guy with the island, Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, worldwide known pedophile, was running a pedophile ring. There were some people who were anti-pedophilia who were like, hey, we need to see the list of names that are on this so they can be held accountable for molesting children. And Jimmy Kimmel said, when Aaron Rodgers mentioned it a while back, Jimmy Kimmel said, shut up, Aaron Rodgers, there is no list, or something along those lines. He made fun of Rodgers. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory that there's some list of people out there who did this. And then fast forward to a couple months ago, and it looked as if a list was going to come out. And Aaron Rodgers was asked about it. And he said, well, if that list is coming out, I bet Jimmy Kimmel is nervous. Now, keeping in mind, like I watched that. I saw that live. And my first thought was, yeah, that's not a great thing to be wrong about. Like if you're going to say that thing doesn't exist, you're going to be hoping like hell it doesn't exist. And that if it does, it doesn't come out. So I knew immediately what Rodgers was saying, that you have a guy claiming this thing didn't exist and it might be coming out. So that person is going to be nervous. Cut and dry to me. To people who watch Nick Wright, and think he's got any brains. They said, "Oh my God, he just accused Jimmy Kimmel of being involved." No, he didn't. That your bird brain jumped to that conclusion. What he said was Jimmy's going to be worried if the list comes out because Jimmy had previously said there was no list. So Nick Wrong comes on and says, "Oh, here are the things Aaron Rodgers can do." And one of them, this would be the cowardly thing, but Aaron is going to say, "I never accused Jimmy of it. I just said that he'd be worried about the list." Well, yeah, that's obviously what he was going to do. Do you know why it was obvious? Because that's what he did. Like, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a fortune teller. I sat down, I watched the interview, I heard what Rodgers said, I heard what the bird brain said in response to what Rodgers said, and I thought, did they not listen? Did they not hear? At no point did he accuse anybody. He said the list is coming. The guy who said there was no list is going to be nervous about that. There was nothing wrong with that. But Nick Wright, looking for a chance to get his name in the headlines, jumps on and he's calling Aaron Rodgers, "Oh, he's so dangerous." So Aaron Rodgers, in no way was he dangerous in what he was saying. And some of the other conspiracy theories. Now we have conspiracy theorists about conspiracy theories. We have people with their conspiracy theories offering which conspiracy theories they think Aaron Rodgers believes in. Oh, we have an unnamed source who 11 years ago claims they heard Rodgers say a thing to a person at a party. Can we not accuse anyone on the planet of saying anything we want if we say it happened 10 years ago and there's no evidence and we can just make stuff up if we don't like somebody? Could I not make something up about Nick Wrong from a decade ago and say, "Oh, I was at a party and Nick Wrong said this," and then people jump on it? Again, the fact that these people get to use Rodgers' name to try to bash him for the people who are dumb enough to believe it, listen, it's a reason. You don't have to wonder why ESPN and NFL Network and all these and I love the NFL Network, at least what I watch of it. The Wake Up Football, Good Morning Football. I see clips of it. But I love the live breaking news coverage when they get Shefty on or Ian Rappaport on and they go over that stuff. I enjoy that. But these media companies, that used to like run the sports world, are now laying people off in droves. And I think it's because it's become so much about the hot take that people aren't paying attention. And like, for those of us who are wising up to it, I know for a fact, if I was sitting down watching television and I put on whatever channel the guy is on and Nick Wright comes on or Chris Canty comes on, I know immediately this is not a serious person. What the words that this guy is about to say have nothing to do with honesty, truth, facts, reality, none of it. It's just about how can I keep dummies glued to my screen. And right now it seems there's not enough dummies. And audience, ratings are going down. People are getting fired. And I hope from that we get a sports network that covers sports properly and doesn't do this stuff. Rolling Stone magazine. This is a music magazine a few years ago. When Aaron Rodgers broke his toe, they ran a fake story claiming he had COVID toes, whatever they were calling it. Completely fake, made up lie. And people bought it. People read, ha, 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 ha. He didn't get the shot and now he's got COVID. No, never had it. But it doesn't matter. I guarantee you there's still stupid people out there today who believe he had COVID toe. There's actually a picture. Somebody, if I'm not mistaken, someone on jetnation.com, and I could be wrong, believe their profile picture is Aaron Rodgers holding his toes up to the camera because he did an interview a day or two after that false claim in Rolling Stone. So it's not. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, imagine being a guy. You're going about your life. You're trying to get ready. Aaron Rodgers trying to rehab and get back quicker than he can. Well, like, if that doesn't show leadership, like the fact that he was on the roster and practicing at the point he was is insane, showing how quickly he came along. Great. He didn't reach his ultimate goal, but there's you literally, I left this out at the top. Aaron Rodgers, who his own teammates voted him most inspirational teammate, but then radio guy Chris Canty comes out and says he's a cancer. And he's not a leader. But the dudes in that locker room, who are on that practice field, they say he's the most inspirational guy on the roster. Radio guy says he's a cancer. Who am I supposed to believe? The guy who wants clicks, or the people who are anonymously voting in the locker room, seeing what the guy is doing every day? I mean, again, there is a very good chance that Canty himself did not believe what he was saying, but he understood Aaron's a big name. We're in a big market. If I trash this guy, people might Google me. And it worked. I Googled him because I had a Google Chris Canty rips Aaron Rodgers. Great. And it looks like there may have been a thing last year where he ripped Aaron Rodgers. I pulled something up, a video, I was watching it, and he's like, oh, I got to walk back what he said, I have to walk back the smearing or whatever he said of Aaron Rodgers. And I started watching and I realized, like, oh, this is from a year ago because they're talking about the Packers. So he was ripping him last year. And then that went away, I guess. So he just waited for a new reason to do it. So Canty apparently, like, to him, Rodgers has a target on his back. Slander, that's what he said. I have to walk back the Aaron Rodgers slander. So he admitted last year that he was slandering the guy. And then he waits till this year to say that the guy who was rehabbing quicker than anyone in history from an Achilles is not a good leader. Do you know why? Because he was playing catch on the field with his teammates sometimes. And sometimes when he was playing catch on the field with his teammates, sometimes they pointed a camera at him. Oh, well, Aaron, I mean, you gotta answer for that, Aaron Rodgers. Who do you think you are? Coming out to a football game where your football teammates are playing and throwing a football with them. Clearly just self-serving. Nothing to do with, fitting in with the guys. You see, Aaron Rodgers can't win, right? Because remember, before he came to the Jets, the Jets shouldn't get this guy. He's a bad teammate. Then Aaron Rodgers walks in the door. He shows up to every event, every practice, everything. He's rehabbing. He's with the team. He's working out, talking to them before the games. Oh, look at this. Look at this attention seeking whatever. So no matter if Aaron Rodgers isolates himself, he's selfish. If he comes out and works out with the team, he's selfish. There's no way that these people believe what they're saying. It's ridiculous. Frankie D, thank you so much for the comments. Let's jump in and see what people are saying. I'm a little more fired up than usual, but it's basically lying. You are going on the air on your program to lie to get attention, or you're unbelievably stupid. I think it's lying. I don't think Chris Canty's stupid. I think Chris Canty knows that Aaron Rodgers was voted most inspirational teammate. I think Chris Canty knows that preparation and talent have more to do with winning games than leadership. I think Nick Wright, I don't know. I don't think Nick Wright knows anything. Okay, so, they talk this crap. None of it's true. And listen, if Rodgers says or does something that deserves to be criticized, I'll criticize it. I don't care. I'm thrilled he's a Jet, but I don't do this thing where I make excuses for players that I like because they're on my team. I've taken heat in the past. I've argued with people about, like, I want this guy off the roster. He's not a high character guy. Oh, what do you care? They're not all choir boys. Look, I like rooting for good people. I'm not stupid. I understand you're going to have some bad. Bring 53 people together from any group of society. Some of them aren't going to be really good guys. I understand that. But then there's levels of it. If the Jets had a wide receiver right now who was out driving 150 miles an hour and putting people's lives at risk and then fleeing the scene, I might be like, you know what? If they cut that guy, I understand. I'm not gonna jump on the team. I'm not, maybe the guy needs to be let go, especially if you didn't learn what was it, Ruggs, right? If you didn't learn from that, and you want to dump a guy, go. The shame of it is, honestly, I think it's a league thing. I think the league should get involved there because if a team says we're going to discipline this guy and we're going to release him, and then you penalize the team because the guy can turn around and sign with someone else and beat you in the playoffs. Like, so teams, that could be like, the league needs to step in and say, you did this, you're gone for a year, you're gone for 2, whatever. But really the league, but I would have no issue with it because I try to be consistent. Baba Jet, the idea of him being a cancer, he's ridiculous for saying something like this. He has no evidence of being true, and obviously him trying to get clicked. Exactly. It's not true. He knows it's not true. We all know it's not true. Everyone knows it isn't true. I believe even Canty knows it's not true. But you know what else is true? Or you know what is true? You need clicks. And saying Aaron Rodgers is a cancer gets a lot more clicks than saying, man, hats off to Aaron Rodgers for all that work he put in last year. Again, Frankie D, thanks so much. In that case, Josh, exactly. Listen, Josh Allen's not a leader. Lost the playoff game. Patrick Mahomes, he don't win the Super Bowl every year. So I guess the years he doesn't win the Super Bowl, he's not a leader. Because at some point, he lost a game that got them eliminated. Whether it was the final game, whether it was the championship game or week, whatever. If you don't win the Super Bowl, according to Chris Canty, you're not a leader. Speaks to your leadership. Nothing to do with talent, game planning, injuries, none of that. None of that impacted. It's all just leadership. John, it bothers me. It bothers me a great deal because I don't think it should be that hard, to be honest, in sports. I think, and there are things you can criticize, obviously, about the Jets. There are still things they need to do. There are things they need to do heading into the draft. There are things they need to do on the offensive line. You know, we've talked about it. I don't want to tackle it 10, but there are veteran tackles out there now who I wish they would grab. But I'm hoping, my hope, and I think I mentioned this the other day. My hope right now with the Jets is that they're sort of in a holding pattern until after the draft, when the comp pick formula no longer counts and when they know what they've got. But you know, there's a chance. Like, I'm not completely convinced that they're not going to add a tackle through free agency, that they're not going to add a safety through free agency, whether it's Ashton Davis or Justin Simmons or whoever's out there, not Jamal Adams. But somebody like that. I think there will be more moves in free agency. You know, I think back to last year, if you remember, they signed McGovern literally a couple days, maybe a week or so before the draft, which was a little surprising because everything gets settled. It seemed like, okay, they're going to head into the draft and see how things play out, and then they'll adjust from there. So I don't know that they'll add anyone right before free agency this time around. But I think that would be the perfect scenario, is the Jets add a veteran tackle and a veteran safety either just before or just after the draft. Really just before, because, you know, we've talked about flexibility. That gives you that much more. I mean, because those are really the only two holes. You could say DT, but they've added some bodies there. I'd like an upgrade. I would like a Tavondre Sweat or a Ruka Rororo, somebody like that. We'll see what happens there. We'll talk draft later. But this one was about, man, be it Aaron Rodgers and these fake stories, people either making stuff up or reporting things that pretending not to understand. Oh, that's not what he said about Jimmy Kimmel. It's exactly what he said about Jimmy Kimmel. He said the guy's going to be nervous because there's a list coming, and he denied there was a list. This isn't hard, people. This isn't rocket science. It's almost harder to pretend not to understand it than it is to understand it. But this is where we are today. I'm out of here for this one. Have a good one, Jets fans.